Okay, welcome everybody to the June 2nd Virtual Builder Town Hall. I think most of you know me, but just in case you don't, I'm Meredith Oliver. I'm the president founder of Meredith Communications. We do digital marketing, online sales counselor coaching, sales training for builders. So if it's regarding sales or marketing and new homes, that is our lane. I've been doing it a long time and it's my passion and what I love to do most. So very honored that you've chosen to spend time with us. I know there's a lot of competing webinars at the same time that you can attend. There's so many per day, it's really impossible to do them all. And really appreciate you giving your time and attention to us today, and we promise to use it wisely. So obviously, there's a lot going on in the world, and it is a difficult time. It is a stressful time. It is an uncertain time. And so when weighing out whether to have the town hall today or not, what I felt most strongly about was that the purpose of these town halls, when I first started them, almost 11 weeks ago now, when COVID really became foremost in our minds, it was a safe place for us to come together, to learn, to talk. This is not a webinar. There are no slides. This is a conversation between me and you, and each of you, as you use the chat to talk to each other, and our expert panelists and guests that are going to join us today. And so as I thought that through, I thought, well, maybe there's no better time to have a town hall. I know that I've missed you, and I need my tribe just as much as hopefully you need to be with your tribe. So at the same time, the reality is that you have sales goals to meet. You have marketing benchmark and performance numbers to meet. If you're an online sales counselor, you've got appointment numbers that you've got to hit. We've all got those performance items that ultimately result in the sale of a home, and those things are still very much that we're accountable for making those things happen regardless of what's happening. So in an effort to support you and to kind of bring us back together again as this whole crazy 2020 takes another hard left. Did we skip the murder hornets? Like, seriously? I figured, yeah, we're going to have a town hall and we're going to talk through issues today that we are here to support you so that you can carry on, because we know that you're accountable and responsible to do just that to your sales manager or your builder owner or whomever you report to. So with that in mind, I'll kick us off with our first item that I want to cover, just like I always do, is I take a look at what's happening with our digital website traffic and our pipeline. So I'm going to pull a couple of things up here on my screen that I want to show you, because I think they're going to really just make you feel very comfortable and frankly excited about where we are. Just getting it kind of enlarged and blown up here. Just give me 1 second. So when I asked you, how are you feeling about June sales, I think you ought to feel good. And let me show you why. So this is a screenshot of my master Google Analytics dashboard. You know, we monitor an awful lot of home builder websites, and I blurred out the names to protect the innocent. But this is May over April. There's one extra day in the comparison because May is a 31-day month and April's only 30, and we want to do apples to apples. And I want you to look at the sessions column, which is for visits. And I want you to look down the column here at the sheer amount of green. So that's the percentage that builder's website increased in total visits month over month. We've got anywhere from a 6% to 40% to an 80%. Yeah, there's a couple that maybe they went down. In almost every one of those cases, there is something very specific. They're down to one home site, and that's a community website. You know, they've paused marketing because the whole project's gone on hold. Like there's something bigger at play. So you'll see a couple of red numbers where traffic went down, but by and large, as I go down this, the sheer amount of green and the size of some of these numbers is just mind-boggling. So what it means when we've had a very strong website month of interest, looking at your homes, looking at your communities, looking at your lots for sale, whatever it is that you're specifically selling, that means that in approximately 45 days, we should see then an influx in walk-in traffic, phone calls. As early as 30 days, we'll start seeing live chats. We'll start seeing phone calls to the OSC and appointments through the OSC. I've got another screen I want to show you. So if I take all of the traffic together and aggregate it that way, and I've showed you this report in past months. So this is where I take all of the Google Analytics data that we're monitoring, I average it together. It's 60 builder websites approximately across 40 markets. Look at what happened to May. So May's website traffic blew January and February out of the water, which frankly were at a 10-year high, which was what was so devastating when coronavirus erupted in March, because we were just, I mean, we hadn't seen anything like January and February in the past 12 months before that. And then look what happened to May. That's insane. If I come down to the next line, the red line you're looking at here is 12 months prior. So now I'm looking at 2020 May over 2019 May. And I don't think 2019 May was all that shabby, frankly. So we've just got exponential increases here in people's desire, interest level. And I think we can all agree that with people being cooped up at home in homes they don't like, in tight spaces, without outdoor living, without walking trails, without a lot of the things that our communities offer, they are suddenly, the light bulbs come on. The other tool that I'll bring to your attention that I'm paying really pretty much daily attention to is a brand new tool put out by Think with Google. And those of you that are clients of ours, just bear with me. I know we go over this stuff ad nauseum. I apologize. I'm getting everybody else up to speed. So this Think with Google has a brand new tool out where it's monitoring rising retail categories. So what are people Google searching? And what's been interesting about this is, for example, outdoor umbrella bases, paddleboards, water parks and slides. There were 3 weeks in a row where the top one was sneeze guards. I guess if you're preparing a business to reopen and you needed plexiglass, you know, to make it safe. But if you go down, you can, on any of these, for example, this one, you can click the category and then see specific queries within this overall category. How does this relate to you? Well, if you are selling a resort style community with a water slide and a lazy river, then I would plan June content, blogs, social media posts, Facebook lives around that, because you know people are looking for it, that it's something they want. If we're Googling it, we desire it, or we're trying to solve it. That's how we use Google. So I think being aware of, swimming pools, wakeboarding, maybe your community's near a lake. I mean, there's so many tie-ins to how our homes allow for and enable these kind of lifestyles that people are looking for. And again, if they're Googling, it's of interest. So what I know for sure, and especially like after this past weekend, there's a lot of things I don't know for sure at all anymore, right? Don't you feel like that? But when we look at our data, one thing I know for sure is people are interested in new homes. So if your trend line for your website traffic doesn't look like this, or if it looks like this, but those are not then developing into leads for your salespeople, live chats, phone calls, text messages, if all of that isn't happening, then let's talk about it, because it should be. It really should be. I've just been blown away by what the data looks like. So that's my update on that. Hopefully it reassures you, gives you hope. I'm going to just check over to the chat real quick and see. Kevin, great question. Kevin's asking, do you find or see a difference in segmented builders if you show below 300 or over 300? What's interesting? I've seen the strongest activity in the over market, I would say 400, 500, 600. Those clients of ours, those jobs haven't been as affected yet. Let's hope. So they're still employed. They can still qualify. The folks that are lights out on sales right now typically are falling in those categories, and that would be anywhere in the nation. That wouldn't just be here in Raleigh, although it is true here in Raleigh. But under 300s, they're still hanging in there. I would say they might be a touch slower, and those are definitely the jobs that have been more impacted, perhaps. But if your experience is different than that, please write me into the chat. I would love to hear about it. So this is meant to be a give and take, and so we're definitely want to hear from you guys and what you think about it. Okay, so our next segment that I'm going to do is, over the past few weeks, we've been talking about what it means to be bold in your sales and marketing efforts. Our first week, we started out with B, which was breaking barriers, because at that time, many of you literally had physical barriers to being able to sell. If you were in a state where you'd been completely closed down as non-essential, or you were just go ahead and closing models and only doing virtual as a way of safeguarding employees. So we definitely had physical, which will lead to mental barriers that we had to break through. So that was a big one. Then the next week was O, and that was overcoming obstacles, which may sound similar to breaking barriers, but it actually, the obstacles referred to overcoming those obstacles that our buyers are facing, and their feelings and their fears and their mental roadblocks that you have to overcome and work through in order to keep them moving forward towards a purchase. Then we did L, which I think has probably turned out to be most everybody's favorite so far. It was love it or list it. I got loose on L that day and just lit up a tirade. And I'm not even really sure where all that came from, but love it or list it stands for when just having the passion that you love your job, and that when you love what you do, truly love it, it comes through and it gives buyers confidence to overcome their obstacles to move forward. That passion is contagious, not only in a magnetic sense of people wanting to be around you, but truly in a way of it gives me confidence and certainty was the word we used. And that's really, your buyers are looking for that certainty from you, and they're taking their cues from you. And then we said, if you can't confidently say that you love it from an industry, from an employer, from a team, from a product standpoint, then maybe it's time for you to list it. And so that turned out pretty good. And all of the previous B.O.L.D segments are available in our Facebook group. We'll put the link here. If you aren't a member of the Facebook group, go ahead and join our Facebook group. Every single town hall recording is posted there. They're also on my YouTube channel and on our Meredith Communications blog as well. So they're in a number of places where you can find them. So D today is do what works. Do what works. So as the coronavirus really raged on, and there were several weeks there where Kerry, Angela, Matt can't be with us today, but we were all texting each other, kind of like, everyone is freaking out. And are we saying the right things? Are we doing the right things? I mean, there were days I took so many calls, by the end of the day, I couldn't even put a sentence together, because we were all scared. And what I observed was some builders, more than others, had a culture of very focused, measured forward movement. And then I noticed that others were more frenetic, reactionary, frantic, not necessarily trusting their people to make good decisions. And so I kind of thought about this as bright, shiny object syndrome, BSOS. And the ones that have been successful through this whole thing are really focused on the D in bold, which is do what works, and not get trapped in BS, almost literally OS, bright, shiny object syndrome. So do what works means that we're always clear on the fundamentals of what it takes to sell and market new homes. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't innovate how, and that's why we had to break barriers, right? So that's where using Zoom or Facebook Lives or virtual appointments, we always do some test conversations right before we go live with all of our experts. And Kerry was saying, and I'm sure she'll reiterate this when we bring her on in a few minutes, she was telling the sales team the other day, please, just because your models are back open, please don't let go of the positive things of virtual selling. That's here to stay. And so while that is an innovation of how, the what of doing what works is very, very constant. And it's been constant all the years that I've been involved in this industry. So when the unexpected happens, when crisis hits, how can, if you're a sales leader on the call, or if you're a leader in the organization, or you're just leading yourself as a team member, I encourage you to really get very laser focused on do what works. So if I say to you, focusing on the fundamentals of what sells new homes, I want you to go into the chat box and type in, what do you think some of those fundamentals are? What is a fundamental of selling new homes, marketing new homes, something that has to happen in order for it to come through and come into a sale? All right, so I'm looking over in the chat box. Let's see thank you, Jennifer. Okay, education, data analysis, open mind. Okay, education. All right, features, I love that. Having the right sales team, Noemi, I couldn't agree with you more. Meeting clients in person, yes, but virtual does allow the customer to have choice, right? As opposed, like, do it our way, it's the highway. It gives them some choice. Okay, Jen, personalized support, 1000%. That's a great one. All right, I'll give you a couple more minutes. What are some of the fundamentals of selling new homes that we, regardless of what hard left turn takes, we have to say as a team, these are the things we have to execute on. How we do them may change. All right, so what I wrote down for my list is number one, and Kerry teaches this better than anybody out there on the planet, bar none, but number one, there has to be a why. There has to be a why for somebody to sell, to buy a new home. There is no sale without a why. So when we're trying to innovate and we're scrambling around, don't forget that even if whether we do it virtually or in person, or we do it digital, or we do whatever we do, at the end of the day, if we aren't communicating a why that connects to the target audience, we don't make sales. Now, the why looks different. And a lot of times in sales folks will really hone in on the price and only focus on price. And I think that's a mistake. Price is an important factor, but it's not the only motivation, right? So it could be a location-based why. It could be a space why, which I think is what is driving a lot of this massive interest in new homes right now, because we are the ones with the open concepts and the giant walk-in closets, not that 50-year-old used resale home, right? We have appropriate space. We have outdoor living spaces. I mean, we have that in droves, all right? It could be a home site why. It could be an overall lifestyle driven why. I want to move to the coast. I want to live in a neighborhood with a built-in pool and walking trails and soccer field, because after all of this has happened, I never ever want to leave the bounds of my neighborhood ever again, but I have to keep my kids busy and entertained and off screens. So I think these whys, that whatever the why is, that is fundamental. We have to do what works, which is tap into the why. Okay. All right. The next one, fundamental, I think, is there will always be a hard limit, a ceiling on what people can afford. Everyone, no matter what they tell you, has a price point. They have a price range in mind. They have a monthly payment that they are comfortable with. I definitely have conversations with builder, marketers, owners, salespeople where they're just convinced that they could talk somebody into a price range if they could just realize the value. But at the end of the day, if they don't qualify for that, if that isn't in their monthly payment budget, it's not going to work. So I know some of you resist communicating and marketing on price, but for me, especially as a digital marketer, I never ever want our clients to pay for clicks that isn't somewhat self-qualified by the web visitor. So regardless of the situation, I'm not saying we sell on price, but I am saying we give people the opportunity in our marketing to self-qualify in or out as one of the criteria. All right, I'm going to just check over to our chat. I don't see Brian. I don't see, I'm like checking your, okay, Kevin, you're having your own conversation over there. I'll let you have it. All right. Number 3, fundamental. Our buyers always want more than whatever number 2 allows. So whatever that range is, they always want more for that. They want what they want, and what they need, and what fits number 2 of their monthly payment comfort range. There'll always be a Grand Canyon between number 2 and number 3. That's a fundamental to selling new homes, and that's why we sell value. Okay. And then lastly, we have to be able to understand their why so that we can explain to them what we have, how we do it that's better, and why we do what we do. And without that transfer of value wrapped up in a personal relationship, we don't have a sale. So that's where when I was getting the phone calls and the text messages and the emails of, some infighting and some chaos in some of the organizations, to me, as all of this struck, to me, what made sense was to go back to what do we know we have to do in order to sell. Now, how do we innovate that to do it differently? So I hope that makes sense to you. I would encourage you, if you're still feeling, and especially with everything going on now, if you're feeling disjointed or you're feeling like as a team, you're not really working together, there's a lot of voices and a lot of different opinions about how everything should be done, I think this would be a great exercise to do together, either with your leadership or your sales team, and just really come together on what do we agree are the fundamentals and how do we double, triple down on do what works. We have to do what works. And then, okay, now keeping our eye on that very specific list, how do we innovate that to meet the times? And that is time well spent. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is bring in our panelists for today. So I'm gonna ask her to start her video, give her a second to come in. Hey there, all right, let me get you unmuted. Okay, perfect. So speaking of doing what works and trying to stay focused, I'm so thankful and appreciate Jennifer Walsh of Pacific Lifestyle Homes joining me today. So, hi.
Good morning, afternoon, sorry.
I know, right? Well, you're on the West Coast, right? So, yeah, so you're definitely morning for you, afternoon for me. And so we've been working together probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 months now, I guess.
Yeah, about that. I think about 8 or 9.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. We've survived building 2 websites together and we're still friends. So that's got to be a good sign, right? But you guys are very focused on your data and knowing your numbers. And I think when we are trying to innovate quickly, we're feeling a little frantic. We're feeling like I've never done a pandemic. Your state was closed for 5 weeks to construction. If you want to do what works, the safest way to do that is to rely on your data to guide you. And you all are very data driven in your sales and marketing. So I was really glad that you agreed to kind of share some of those ideas with everybody. Tell us what some of the data points are that you pay attention to the most, and how does that help you stay focused?
Yeah, I think I created a small list of ones that I felt, especially during a pandemic, that seemed so much more important and highlighted during this time. But response time was a big one for us. I mean, if you're paying money to get people on your website, you need to be available when they're there. And so making sure that not only was our availability switched, we have the pleasure of having 2 OSCs. So we were able to spread out their hours to make sure we had coverage from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., just kind of based on the active hours on our website. And then making sure that they're responding to leads quickly. That was a big one for us. We really tried to drive down our response time as much as possible. We are not quite to the 5-minute recommendation, but we're getting much closer, and you can definitely tell a difference that our leads are converting a little bit better because of that.
It's good.
Yeah. Go for it.
No, so on the availability, on the first one that you mentioned, how much more time did you add for live chat? Like, do you mind sharing like what you went from to what you went to?
Yeah. So, I mean, active hours prior, we had someone 8 to 6. If after hours they were available to answer a live chat or respond to a lead, they did. But it was never always a guarantee. And so now it's 7 to 10. So that would be about 6 more hours.
Yeah. And and you're spreading that out among two, like you said. Don't everybody panic. That's not one person from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. But I that was something that I know you and I had talked about, and that was something where we didn't really have any data on that explicitly at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
But it was sort of an instinct thing where if you think about our own lives as it was unfolding, we weren't sleeping much. I wasn't. I was on the computer way different hours than I was normally on the computer. And it was kind of like, what would happen if, without putting too much of a burden on the OSCs, what would happen if we just expanded this time to try to meet this changed lifestyle?
It definitely wouldn't hurt anything. And I think that was a conversation we had. I mean, worst case scenario, if we saw an issue, we switched back. But it's paid off in dividends. So it's totally been worth it for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So sometimes going back to my 30,000 foot concept that I was sharing with you guys. So do what works. So we know a fast response works. We know that when you talk to people in real time, whether it's by phone or text or live chat, you're much more likely to convert those into appointments than emails that get trapped in spam and drag on for months and months and go nowhere, right? So it's like, okay, that's what works. So how do we innovate that to match the times? And that's where, I appreciated what you guys did. And then you took a risk on that, but then it paid off for you.
Yeah, it most definitely has. I mean, I don't think my OSCs loved the idea at the time,
No.
but they have understood it as we went from a very rough April of, I mean, we could sell homes, but we couldn't really build them, to a really good May.
Yes.
And I think that contributes to that a little bit.
It definitely does. All right. What are some of the other data-driven points you're paying attention to?
Yeah, conversions is a big one. So obviously your web traffic is down. Obviously your leads are down, but paying attention to that conversion rate. Are you still kind of within that same percentage that you were before? If you aren't, what is not converting and why? But also paying a little bit more attention to what is converting, what got them to that website, because maybe there's a change. If all of a sudden you're seeing 50% more leads coming from Zillow, I mean, why? What is triggering that? And go to Zillow and maybe do some boost advertising or something along those lines, figuring out what was working and amplifying it.
Yeah. I know that we've talked in several of these sessions about how in real time monitoring what community has a surge in website traffic, which quick move-in home has a surge, or the opposite has had a drop and needs a push. I mean, the more all of you, if you're on the marketing side, the more you can monitor that. And then if you're in sales, the more that you can collaborate with the marketing folks to kind of get insights into some of that data, the better prepared and armed you are to make real-time decisions to do more of what works. Were there any surprises as far as sources of traffic? You mentioned Zillow or Facebook or whatever. Were there anything that you saw spikes in that kind of surprised you? Or
I wouldn't say it necessarily surprised me. I mean, we saw a pretty good spike in Facebook ads, and that is no surprise to anyone on this call, I'm sure. But I think the surprise came more so from the time on site and the bounce rate from those ads. Typically, I mean, Facebook ads aren't the highest quality traffic, but it was providing us, I mean, some pretty good traffic and conversions from it.
Yeah.
The other kind of knowing what works or paying attention to what works is we really paid attention to the sales we were having looking at those buyer demographics, knowing where they were buying, what that price range was. All of our buyers fill out a demographic survey. And so really paying attention to those sales we had, because that also is clearly what worked. And some of the stuff I saw in there that was more surprising to me than our web traffic.
Okay, how so?
We have seen a huge spike in first-time home buyers. And if anyone knows our market, I mean, we're $400 to $1.2 million homes in the Portland, Seattle metro areas. So we're typically not a first-time home buyer market.
Right.
And so that really surprised me, as well as the people actually pulling the trigger have been searching for a home for about a year. And so I think what really is forcing them to pull the trigger was probably mortgage rates a little bit. They've been in the market looking for a year. They're not really seeing what they want, but now they can afford $50K more and jump on the bandwagon and get a whole new home instead of a used one. I mean, that's kind of our philosophy, and maybe we're wrong, but we typically did not see many before, and the last few sales, I would say, is about 50-50.
And one thing that we've consistently seen over the years on what works is if somebody has been looking and is thinking, but they've kind of been sitting and spinning around in circles for a long time, there is an understanding of the impact of interest rates among educated buyers, right? So especially second-time buyers, et cetera, like they get what every 0.5% or percent means on a monthly payment. So the minute that feels uncertain or that it might change for whatever reason, it's going to motivate them. It's going to move them forward. And that's a great way of kind of weeding out who's serious, who isn't, what have you, because people who kind of get it, get interest rates, I think. Does that make sense, everybody?
Makes sense to me.
All right. So what other data points are you typically paying attention to?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of going into this is making sure our content was user-friendly and easy to find and accessible. So looking at, like, obviously you build our website, so you know what our back end looks like, but looking at those events, seeing where people are interacting and making sure it lines up with what you want them to be interacting with. If for some reason they're going to your photo gallery, but they're not doing videos or interactive floor plans, I mean, maybe those things aren't easy to find.
Yeah.
And so really kind of watching those event numbers, and if you have goals set up, watching those goal numbers to kind of go along with conversions.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I want to make sure they're finding the request information button or the request a tour very early on the sites where we added at the top, you know, that little alert or that little announcement so that builders could easily update their site with our model homes are closed, but we're open for virtual or private appointments. You know, you had to kind of give a status of where you were or what you had available during this time. And so I said, well, I want to put a link, either a clickable phone number or a clickable email. I want to put something up there because I want to know if people are seeing that so that we are effectively communicating that. And sure enough, by creating what's called an event in your Google Analytics tracking specifically for that alert, we saw a lot of clicks on that, and it gives you, you know, just confidence that, okay, they're seeing it and they're getting the message is getting through. Whereas if you've got all your phone numbers tagged, but there's no event clicks on phone numbers, maybe they're not finding them or they're not seeing them. Yeah. So those are really good ones. Anything in your CRM reporting that you kind of, I mean, obviously you're looking at sales and conversions for your OSCs, things like that.
Yeah.
What about in the CRM?
Not as much, and I will be completely honest, I am new to managing our OSC, so I'm still kind of learning as I go. So my reports are not the greatest, and that's probably why not so much. I watch activity counts and stuff like that, but really the biggest thing we were watching was just our response time. We were pulling that report daily and seeing if there was an outstanding lead, why was it missed, or why was the time so long, and what we could have done to shorten it to make it as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with your CRM, and Angela can speak more to this here in just a couple of minutes, I think the conversion rate from kept appointments to sales is really, really important. If you see that your OSC is making appointments, setting them, but they're not converting at a very high percent, 80, 90% into kept, then that could be kind of a red, red flag that maybe there's a consumer confidence problem, or an appointment setting expectation issue, or a lack of confirming appointments consistently. And then if those appointments though are converting into kept appointments and they're at 80, 90% where they should be, and then, but yet no sales are happening, then you look and see, well, again, do we have a consumer confidence? I'm scared to move forward because there's a pandemic and I might lose my job. Or is the salesperson not asking for the sale and not trying to move it forward? And that's, this is where we're always just trying to weigh out. So one of the things that's important for all of you as you look at data to give you information, we look for insights, but then you always then want to go to your people, listen to your common sense, ask a lot of questions before we come to conclusions based on data, because it's the context of the data that really gives you the picture you're looking for. Does that make sense to you, Jennifer?
That makes total sense.
Yeah. Do you guys weigh that out? And like, how do you go about kind of trying to find the context of the data? Do you do it in your team meetings or one-on-one conversations?
It's typically a team meeting. I mean, some of it's a little bit more easy to put into context, and so it's a decision I can do in a much smaller group. But then some things you start noticing trends, and I mean, I have never been through a huge market shift as a marketer or in the home building industry, and so it's sometimes just, what does this look like to you guys? Like, there's a lot of experience in our group, and so it's just kind of getting other ideas and conversations going because of that, and really having to open your mind. I mean, for me, I am very set in my ways sometimes, and so someone suggests something, I'm like, oh, we don't do it that way, and I'm like, that is the wrong answer. You might want to do it that way. Why don't you open your mind and learn a little bit more about it?
It's like, rewind. And that is what's hard, though. I'm going to get Angela and Kerry's videos going here and get them unmuted. And while they're coming in for the rest of our conversation, that is what's hard about this, though, to your point, because those of us with experience who, I had shared with you at the beginning of this was my third big business disruption. I did 9/11 at the beginning of my career. Then I did 08. Boy, did I do 08. And so, but the problem is when you have that experience, you tend to say things like, but this is how we've always done it, and this is what works, and you get too set in those ways. So my goal for our town halls, for my overall philosophy of kind of how I run a business and how I think, has been, how can I pull from those experiences, learn the lessons, let's just learn them once and not have to learn them again, right? But then know what my fundamentals are, but be very open to innovate how I accomplish those fundamentals. And that's the balancing act. So as I bring Angela and Kerry in, before we kind of shift into our next conversation, anything you guys want to share? Because I know, like Kerry, I referenced you during talking about why, and Angela referenced you talking about CRM and numbers. So anything you guys want to jump in on that part of the conversation?
When you talk about the why, everybody, you know, just like you said, ad nauseum, you were going to say some things that all your people heard. So I have some of you right now that are going to get that too. But I make it very simple that, and Meredith, you've been with me when we've done this, is that what is the buyer's happening? Something is happening. That is why they called, they reached out, they stopped by. Something was happening, and it either is happening, it's going on right now, and that's why they're there, that happening in their life. It already did, and now we're reacting, and now we're coming for a new home, or it will. We will be right sizing. So from a sales perspective, and from online and wherever, if you can extrapolate their happening, decide if it is, did, or will, you kind of have the secret sauce to try and sell them a home.
Yeah. And that happening, that why, that motivating factor,
Right.
that is a fundamental to making
Correct.
a sale that isn't going to change. So that's where, you know, staying focused, no BS syndrome.
Yeah, right? I love that.
I know, BSOS, but I'm mostly focused on the BS part. And did you want to jump in on that part of the conversation?
You know, on the data side of it, we're seeing a tremendous uptake in interest level in understanding the data, and whether, you know, you're using, we're seeing a lot of our customers using Google Data Studio to, and I know Jen, you're using that to work through your CRM data, work through your data from other sources, and really understand, you know, your poll that you put out, you know, how comfortable are we this month? If you understand your data and you know that you need X number of leads, that this will create X number of appointments, and from those appointments, you're going to see, you know, X number of conversions, right? I mean, if you understand what your numbers need to be, you will have a far better month and relaxing month, knowing that you're meeting those targets, or what you need to do to shift and pivot.
Right. And you're so right, because in the heart of this thing, when I felt personally very anxious and worried for all of our clients, and ultimately what that meant for us, I kept logging in every week, doing a quick little screencast and sending it to every builder. And every time I did that, looking at the data, yeah, the numbers were down, but they were climbing up every week. Every week the traffic was better. Every week it was better again. And I'm like, we might survive. Like, it gave me confidence, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So to your point, boy, I lived that. That's an excellent point. Okay. So we always, when we do these town halls, we always speak to you kind of on two levels. We speak to you from a business perspective, but we also always speak to you on a kind of a personal development perspective as well. And not only will your data help you stay and do what works and stay focused, but for me personally, and in talking with these ladies before we did the call today, I've also found that your habits and your routines also very much help you stay focused and stay the course. And I know Matt had suggested, and I think it might have been on a town hall, or it might have been in one of our text rallies between the four of us, this book called Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Does anybody else, if you've read Atomic Habits, go mark in chat that you've read it. It's been out several years. It's not new. The author is, hold on, I got my copy right here off my, James Clear, and it's Atomic Habits. And one of the atomic habits that I had developed a couple of years back was turning off the news in the morning as I got myself dressed and ready for work, and instead putting a podcast or an audiobook or something in my ears of positive development, and listened to a lot of good stuff over that time. And over the past 2 weeks, I have been devouring Atomic Habits. And one of the things in this book is called habit stacking. So habit stacking is, let's say you have a habit already in place. The moment that you get up, the very first thing you do is make a cup of coffee. Like that is a die-hard habit for you. Let's say you have a new habit that you want to begin. You do what's called habit stacking. So you put the new habit right after the one that you always consistently do. So let's say you wanted to try to make sure you ride your Peloton every morning, Angela McKay. My Peloton will be here early July. So if I want to make sure I get up and ride my Peloton, then as I make my cup of coffee and drink it, I put on my bike shorts and my workout clothes. Like you habit stack the thing you want to learn to do right up next to the one that you're already doing. I'm telling you, this book is amazing.
Awesome. I'm
okay?
excited. Yep.
So excited. And what I figured out as in listening to this, that what COVID did to us is it blew apart our habit stacks. We had these habit stacks, these routines of we went to the office, we went to a model home, we did these things in a certain order, and that routine and that order gives us comfort and it makes us feel comfortable. And then all of a sudden, everything we did have to be done differently, and it blew our habit stack.
My habit stack crashed.
Right?
No.
And
like,
so that's where it, when you change that up, and frankly, it's good for us to change it up, right? When you change it up though, it's very uncomfortable. It's like crossing your legs the opposite way. If you're a person that sits with their legs crossed and you go, okay, switch. If you're a person that wears your watch on this arm and you make yourself wear it on this arm all day, you eventually get used to it, but it's very uncomfortable. So suddenly we have these new habit stacks, some of which are more positive than others throughout this ordeal. And then we layer on, all the kidding and silliness aside, we lay on what's happening this weekend, what's happening today that is heartbreaking and tragic and difficult. And the way that you're going to be able to keep working and stay focused in your B.O.L.D is to get back to your habit stacks. So I asked Angela, Kerry, Jennifer, if they wouldn't mind sharing, and I'll chime in if there's time. What are the habit stacks or the habits that you personally have been helpful to you, or that you've seen your builder clients do that was helpful to them to be successful? Anybody want to jump in?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You look
Well,
ready.
First of all, I just want to say I'm a work in progress. I don't,
Oh.
and through all this, I have not nailed the whole habit thing. But what I have done is I have consistently worked out every morning. And I think I've mentioned that on past. I've become I have forced myself to become a morning person. I have forced myself to become a 5 a.m. person. And, really focused on getting that workout done before. Because quite honestly, when you establish a positive habit, it just makes you feel better. And feeling better, start at the beginning of your day, makes the rest of your day seem a little bit more tolerable.
Right?
So that's one thing that I have, and movement has always been super important to me. Movement is a requirement. I shudder to think if I couldn't move, that would be heartbreaking for me. The one other personal thing that I have done, and I have really tried hard, I can't say I'm perfect at this, but I try to plan the week ahead on my Friday afternoon beforehand. And the reason being is that it allows you to focus the weekend on the weekend. And you don't get that sinking awful pit in your stomach on Sunday thinking what's ahead for Monday. You can enjoy your Sunday. And I always feel better on Sundays when I've done it on Friday, when I've planned my week on Friday afternoon. And Friday afternoon, sometimes you don't feel like working anyways, right? So it's a perfect time to get those things checked off. So that's one thing. I think I read a book, Laura Vanderkam. She's a mom of 4 or 5 kids, I think, crazy. And she's fabulous from a time management perspective. She's written a ton of books, and I've quoted her in the past. I've learned a few tips from her along the way, and that's one thing that I've really tried to stick with. And you know, from a client perspective, one of the things that we have talked about a lot is the systematic approach to follow up and making it easier for your sales team and having a process in place. But one thing that we've been educating our clients about is it doesn't mean fancy customized templates all the time. Sometimes a systematic approach is as simple as a reminder activity to change the rating of a prospect. It doesn't always mean the interruption of an email or all of that. There's a time and place for that, but sometimes all the salespeople need is just a reminder that they need to do something, they need to act on something. And I've always said to our customers that it's always easier, set a task, you complete an activity, set another one. You don't want to have to clutter your brain with having to remember, so set it and then forget it. Yeah. So that's mine.
and those of you that, if you're interested in the book, his first law or rule, recommendation, whatever you want to call it, to developing new habits is make it easy, make it attractive, make it something you want to do. And if you can set the next reminder right when you do habit stack, one reminder, set the next one, you've made it easy for yourself. So absolutely. Yeah, cool. Okay, Kerry, what you got?
It was interesting for me when you tasked us with this, everything that you make us think, right? And I thought, okay, a habit. So before I share the habit, what it made me reflect on is that, which is first, the chicken or the egg? Do you just get to start creating a new habit, or does something else have to happen first, right? So for me, I realized that I think it's your character, and you kind of assess your character, and then you decide what new habit you might want. So for instance, those of you that play the disc game with me, let's say you're a green card, so you're really dominant, right? So you realize in this new world that you might need to be more empathetic. That's not in your colors, right? So the new habit that you want might be to be more caring, right? But that's not easy for you. You're a green card. So you create a habit of, I know I could just say thank you more often. And then the habit stack would just be thank you, thank you, thank you. But it came from figuring out your character first. So you made me, that was thought-provoking on that. You can't just all of a sudden go, okay, I want a new habit, I'm in, let's go. And then you're like, But for me, I realized that the habit that I did was not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, for sure. But what it was touch it once. And what touch it once meant for me, and I heard this a long time ago, I'm certainly not the maker of touch it once, but because we were at home and our environments were different, you could just be doing a little of all these things and nothing came to fruition. So I even said it to myself. I was like a freaking idiot in my own head going, I touched it and then I was going to leave it not quite done and go do something else. And it's touch it once. So I marched my little happy butt back and completed that. So for me, just being mindful of how many times I touched so many things and not get anything to fruition was frightening. So touch it once.
Touch it once. I love it.
Yeah. Or a couple times, but for sure don't just touch it and leave it. So it's not set it and forget it in that world, right, Ange?
Exactly.
Right.
And for my teens, when I was reflecting on what was the habit that I wished for them and I ingrained in them, and it's what you alluded to before, is that we have conditioned our customer to a virtual world, to a new way of shopping, a new way of buying. And it would be, I hope that one of the things that's happened is that I've helped them instill in themselves the fact of doing, to your point, do what works for today in B.O.L.D. Find what virtually works for you and don't let that go. Because if it worked for you, and it did for everybody, my most freaked out, my most frightened, I mean, the best emails were the ones that went, I can't believe I did that, but I did that. And they came in or they answered me. Is that just, I hope that that is a habit that doesn't go away, because our customers, and you've all heard me talk about the word crave, you know, we seek what we crave. Like you crave working out and getting up in the morning. Not so much, but I crave other things. But I think people are starting to crave that virtual being able to do something. So, and I really learned that the grass is not always greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it.
There we go. Nice. Jennifer, what about you?
Yeah, so my April was month. I had a 1-year-old who didn't want to sleep all month long, and a husband who was working from home. However, he drives equipment for a living, so he sat right across from me at his desk watching YouTube videos all day. So my struggle, kind of 3 weeks into it, I was like, I don't want to wake up in the mornings. My baby didn't sleep last night. My husband's still sleeping and somehow slept all night long while she was screaming. So my personal habit was not quite as early as Angela, but setting, wake up at 5:30, go and make my coffee, and just enjoy it. Enjoy that moment so I could take a minute and relax. Yeah, away from a crying baby, away from a snoring husband, and just kind of enjoy life and focus on something that was not a world crazy moment. For work though, I really, really, really had to reflect on reading Eat That Frog. So every morning I write my main task list after going through my emails, because usually emails bring a few more things. And I highlighted those frogs because those are things I was really avoiding, because there was so much you were doing and so much change. I was working 7 days a week. And I read that book probably a year ago, and I didn't take nearly enough habits away from it. And so it was one thing I really implemented, was finding those things I didn't want to do and just getting them over with. So by the end of the day, you felt like you accomplished something instead of just sitting on Zoom meetings for 10 hours.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I talked about the habit of really trying to feed my brain something positive so that it has something to like churn on and crank on. So I have something to say to all you lovely people when we talk. And that's definitely a big habit for me. I also would agree with Angela. I like to start and end my day. I have startup routines. Like when I sit at my desk, I have a kind of a shutdown routine. It's pretty rare I just walk off and leave it all sitting here and I don't like shut it down. When I do that, it's been a really, really bad one. I start my day. Before I finish at the end of the night, the last thing I do as I walk out the door is I have a little gratitude journal that I place right dead center on top of all the other pieces of paper, which means when I sit back down here in the morning, it's open. And I love this when I got it off Amazon. It was super inexpensive. It's just 3 little lines, 3 sentences. It doesn't take me 45 seconds, but every single morning, 3 quick things. And it's a good habit, a good way of kind of starting. And then on the shutdown side, I found this on Amazon. It's a mouse pad that's a to-do list. So I get all the notes of all the client meetings from the day and quickly kind of fill my columns in. And then when I sit down, I've got my gratitude for the day and I've got a working list of what needs to be done. And those are just ways that I boot up and shut it down and kind of keeps me on track. All right.
You just reminded me that when you put your gratitude journal down there and you put it on the top, I thought Not that, but I thought I
Oh.
was a little fruity because I always, before I'm done for the day, put on my keyboard the first thing I have to do the next day.
Oh, the next day.
So that
Yeah.
I allow myself to get into my email because it's in my way.
Right? Right. It's literally on top of all my papers.
It's on the keyboard.
And what am I going to do? Look down and go, I am not going to be grateful today. I mean, like, really, what kind of person does that?
That's a good one.
Even though lately it's been tempting, right? Okay. So just to pull all this together, I know a lot of you have got to get going and it's dinner time and all of these other things. The other thing that I have in my office that kind of keeps me grounded, I don't know if you can see it, but my mom gave me this years ago. It's a Wizard of Oz snow globe, and it's got the ruby red slippers inside, which is super appropriate for a shoe person like myself. But I use this analogy and this example all the time in my speeches. If you remember at the end of the Wizard of Oz, Glinda the Good Witch says to Dorothy, but my dear, you've had the power all along. And we're all out there searching for the answer or the quick fix or the thing to fix our businesses, to fix our brokenness personally, to fix our relationships, to fix. But despite all of the unrest and all of the difficulty that we're all experiencing right now and how horrific it is, I would encourage all of us that we've had the power all along, that we have within us the ability to not only solve those big problems that are so hard right now globally, but also to be successful and productive and to do the things that you need to do to move yourself in your career forward and move your business and your team forward. So even though it's felt a little bleak around the edges, my dear, you've had the power all along. Lean into your support system, to your friends, to your town hall. We're here for you to help you be successful. And if you need a pair of ruby red slippers, I bet I know someone that can get you a pair.
And
All
there's no
right.
place like home.
There's no place like home. And that is what we do. And so we're very lucky and blessed to be part of that solution for people. Okay. All right. Well, that'll do it. We will be back in July, first Tuesday of the month. We will be way farther ahead on program planning at that time and get that out to you much sooner, but we're glad that you were with us and we'll talk to you soon. Join the Facebook group, keep the conversation going. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Kerry. Thanks, Angela. Bye.
Bye.
Love you guys. Bye.
Love you more.